Hey, everyone. Welcome to a special bonus episode of Locked on Lakers for a Sunday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. The Lakers win their third straight, 118-108, as Anthony Davis dominates the Golden State Warriors. Good start to the road trip. That's next.
You are Locked on Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked on Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, sometimes on Sundays. No matter how or where you get your podcasts, this one's always free, never behind a paywall. And Locked on Lakers on YouTube, Andy, is where over 27,000 subscribers are enjoying the rest of their weekend, thanks to what the Lakers did in San Francisco on Saturday night. 118-108, the final score. A game, really the Lakers, after maybe, midway through the first quarter, really controlled, I think, pretty effectively. I felt like they were the sort of the better team.
I mean, they finished the half up just 1 point. It was 59-58 at the half. I'm not saying that I was concerned the Lakers were going to lose the game. I mean, certainly after just one half. But I would say it's an overstatement that the Lakers controlled it from the first quarter on. I do think from the maybe halfway through the third quarter on, they absolutely controlled it. And the more the second half went along, the more and more tight the control the Lakers had over the game became.
Yeah, I just felt like, as the game started to move and you could see sort of how the game was going to be played, I just felt like the Lakers were the team. You watch a game, sometimes you're like, I don't understand how this, one team's winning, one team isn't. But like, if you're just watching without a score, one team looks like they're playing better and is the better team. I felt like the Lakers were that team. As sort of the game went along, certainly in the second half.
Since you mentioned this, actually, a really good tweet from at Run the Jewels, big Lakers fan on Lakers Twitter, because he was responding to someone who said this, like you were saying, Brian, it doesn't feel like this should be a close game right now. Golden State Warriors have a plus 19 edge from threes, points off turnovers, and second chance points. LA is letting them hang around by losing on the margins. In the second half, they said no more margins, kids, and that was basically it.
Well, and one thing I think we can all agree on, Anthony Davis dominated this game, 36 points, 13 rebounds, blocking shots all over the place. He was just, contesting shots all over the place, one block, but just, the Golden State is not set up to really handle AD, I think, in any meaningful way. And
particularly without Draymond Green.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he was just, but to me, this is what you need. Like on a night where there isn't a reasonable defense for AD with the other teams, like go out there and dominate them. Is exactly what he did.
It is a shame that Golden State is not likely good enough to, at minimum, avoid the play-in, if not miss the playoffs altogether, because they are such a good playoff matchup for the Lakers. Like I would love for them to somehow get into the bracket where the Lakers can take them on, because just time and time again we've seen over the last few years the Lakers have way too much size and physicality for them. For all the talk, especially lately, and I'm sure we'll get into it, about AD openly wanting a center, wanting more size on this team. They're still not a small team, especially once you bring back, and we'll talk about it, Jarred Vanderbilt, who finally made his return after nearly a year away from the court.
Yeah, and Vando, you could see Rust aside, he's going to be on a minutes limit and all these other things, but you can just see what it does to put him back into the rotation in terms of adding athleticism, adding, an ability, a skill set that they didn't have defensively. So we'll focus on that in a minute. But, we look at this every game. Like, what is the contribution from some people don't like calling Reeves part of a big three, but the Lakers are constructed like he is. And so, when
JJ Redick referred to LeBron, AD, and Reeves, not necessarily by name, but in a way that was fully obvious who he was talking about as the Lakers' three best players, and said that the Lakers' three best players over the last two games have all played very well, and then everyone around them has been stars in their roles. So to the point we've both made, this is how the Lakers constructed the roster. That's the big three they imagined. If you don't like that big three, talk to Pelinka, not us. We're just reporting what's happening.
He didn't do it. And so you look at what they did, and I gave you AD statistics. LeBron, 25 points, 12 assists. Like, he's really leaning into that that distributor role over the last week or so, especially. And 12 to 25 from the floor, so reasonably efficient. Only took 1 3 the entire night, which I thought was kind of an interesting turn for how LeBron's offense has been. And then Reeves, 16 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, and just solid work, I think, throughout most of the game. So that foundation is what they need from a starting standpoint. And then you can start to talk about the other guys. And you got a couple really nicely timed threes from Dorian Finney-Smith. One to open the game, one later on when the Lakers were, kind of continuing to keep control. Max Christie was 4 of 5. They got 13 points from Dalton Knecht, who suddenly seems to be an NBA caliber basketball player again, and makes a huge difference to what they're doing.
I thought it was really, at least potentially significant, if nothing else, that Dalton didn't just hit 3 threes in this game. They were on the road. Mm-hmm. Because if you look at Dalton's splits, he is shooting about 10, 11% better at home versus on the road from deep. And that we've talked about before, Dalton's scoring is what ultimately, and the shooting in particular, is what makes him playable when you put him out there, or not playable if it isn't happening. Christie hit back-to-back corner threes from the opposite corner that really helped get things going. And you mentioned DFS. He started in place of Rui, who had a calf issue that made him go from available to questionable to out in about 12 or so hours. And obviously, when we've talked before, you and I, about wanting to see DFS in the starting lineup, we meant it with Rui coming off the bench as opposed to Rui not playing. But that being said, Dorian Finney-Smith plus 20 in shade under 26 minutes in this game. The numbers will not jump off the page. 8 points, 3 rebounds, but the fit really does. Like, it is one of those times where the plus 20, if you watch the game, it makes sense. And it also speaks to why you and I have both been saying it makes more sense for him to start. It makes more sense, frankly, for Rui to come off the bench, where I think he will be utilized better. It's just the whole thing. Like, it's silly, like to say, the season starts when, and all that. But they were one of the big things that I was wrong about last year was how dependent they were on Jarred Vanderbilt. It's not that he's an all-star, but there's just nothing to replicate what he does on the rest of the roster. And so I was like, okay, well, I undersold that. I thought they would be able to make up some of that stuff in other spots around with different players, and they just couldn't. And so you're putting him back in, and every time you can add, Dorian Finney-Smith or Jarred Vanderbilt or Max Christie into the, especially defensively, it starts to move guys into more appropriate defensive matchups. You're less dependent on Anthony Davis to cover every mistake, because there are other guys who can pick up players and do things. If you want to aggressively switch and do that kind of stuff, you have more guys who can do it. When you put Christie and Finney-Smith and Vanderbilt and AD on the floor together, LeBron is out there, or whoever's, whatever it is, you can do a lot with those kinds of defenders, because they have the versatility to switch, but also, if you want them to chase through a screen, to do it makes a big difference, because you're opening up options for JJ Redick. Vando played about 12 and a half minutes, finished with 6 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals. We can get deeper into the Vando effect from him coming back. And, like you mentioned, it's going to be revved up. I would imagine it's going to be 10, 15, maybe 17 minutes if you're really pushing things, feeling saucy for a week, 2 weeks, whatever. I would say maybe even most of the road trip. Yeah, well, we'll see how it looks. They definitely don't want to go back to square one with this. But let me just read you a quick list I had in my notes from just the first half from Vando in about, I don't know, maybe 6 minutes. He had a really good defensive rebound in traffic that I believe the Lakers ended up scoring on that possession. He had a putback basket on an Anthony Davis miss, got a steal against Moses Moody, and then set a really good screen that helped clear a path for Dalton Knecht in transition to get to the basket. Like, you see on both sides of the ball things that jump out, things that are the proverbial little things that Vando does. I mean, it brings a different dimension to what the Lakers can do. I mean, he's not a superstar. You know, Vando's return doesn't make them front-running contenders, but it does legitimately, and this is a point that I've been hitting for the last couple of years, he is in his own right the least replicable player on this roster in terms of guys who does the things that he does in one player.
So yeah, I mean, like, and we'll talk about the, you know, the overall, again, the defense looking better, and like, you know, DFS and some of the, you know, the impacts there. And, you know, you pointed out as we were getting ready to start, it was sort of had the volume down for a lot of the, you know, while I was watching. I didn't realize Steph was scoreless in the second half. I didn't know he did much. But it was only after the game that I was like, oh, scoreless. That's pretty good.
Yeah. They did a very good job. Even in the first half of the game, when there were too many open threes for the Lakers' liking, they still, I thought, did a really good job throughout this game, hounding Steph, whether you're talking about Max, whether you're talking about DFS, whether you're talking about, I think, Reeves at times, like Gabe Vincent. AD got matched up on Steph a couple times and did a nice job against them. It was very clear. It was like, we are not that it requires basketball genius to say, let's try to slow down Steph Curry, but it's very clear they said, let's try to slow down Steph Curry.
Well, particularly, you know, that's another place where, you know, we mentioned AD at the beginning of the show. You know, and, you know, obviously we know Draymond, it makes a difference in how he's going to be defended, but like, that's another thing that makes a big difference in how the Warriors run their offense. And so when Draymond's not there, these like pressure valves and releases and all these other stuff they do, they don't have a lot of other guys who can replicate. So you can really hound Steph, confident that the ball's not going to find other places as well as it should. 4 of 17 for Steph, 13 points on the night. And I did mention, you know, so again, the defense looking better, but the Knecht thing before we go, we can talk about this a little bit this week. Like, the Lakers need him to be productive off the bench. And part of the reason they were having so much trouble scoring is he wasn't. You trade D'Angelo Russell in part because you think you have a guy there who can give you 8 to 14 a night relatively consistently or something like that. And when Knecht fell off a cliff offensively, it really hurt them. If he can play with some consistency, it's gonna make a huge difference going forward. Anyway, we will, of course, be back. Lakers are off on Sunday, but the road trip continues on Monday. We'll have a show for you tomorrow. Get you ready for the rest of the road trip. Lots of stuff, Andy. But first,
well, we want to make sure that everybody knows that Locked On Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting, which says something because they've been pretty good. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. $5, you get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app, easy to navigate. The variety of bets keep the game really exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. And whether you are betting on your favorite team or just looking to add a little spice to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $300 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com. Make the playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right. We'll see everyone tomorrow.